The Grow My Cleaning Company podcast helps owners of cleaning companies just like you to grow your company and yourself so you can make more money and finally get the time and money freedom that probably got you into this business. Discover how to automate and create systems that allow you to grow like crazy without losing control. If you dig the show and want to show some love, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It really helps. Enjoy the show. Hey, Cleaning Nation, Mike Campion here with the amazing, the irrepressible Suzanne Bandick. It's so funny. I was literally with her in Orlando and her hubby and my wife and our whole Next Level crew. And we didn't have the sense to be like, hey, we should record a podcast in person because we're not that bright. So we flew our separate ways. We're both now home. And now we're doing our usual podcast. And I'm going to be honest. I think it's a little, I don't want to say controversial, but she slacked me this morning and said, I know we're going to talk about the feeling of overwhelm is a habit. And immediately I was like, yes, that's exactly how people feel. And I do feel like it's a habit. And I would kind of just the topic made me think, could that not, if it's a habit, that means I could change it. Like I just thought it was a thing that overwhelmed me, this feeling of overwhelm, and it was just something we had to experience and deal with. And then habit kind of implies we could opt out. So I immediately said, as I do to all of her topics, yes, I would very much like to talk about that. And here we are. Suzanne, lay it on us, lady.
Okay, well, that feeling of overwhelm that we've probably all experienced at one time or another, and some of us more so than others, we tend to live in that space, is I would like to suggest and point out that really it's simply a habit of how we've learned to cope. And by coping in this way, it's a way for us to not get things done. It's holding us back.
All right. So I'm just immediately fighting against that because I'm like, I hate the feeling of overwhelm. I mean, shame is worse. There might be a couple emotions I'm missing, but overwhelm's got to be my top 5. Like if I could choose to experience an emotion, that would be just one of my least favorite. So tell me more. When you say we use this as a way to cope, like, what do you mean by that?
Okay. It's actually a way to procrastinate. If we can find enough things to pile on ourselves, we will develop the feeling that we're overwhelmed. Sometimes we'll even carry that as a badge of honor. I have so many things to do.
This is so, man, I'm frustrated. We haven't had this conversation years ago, Suzanne, because as a coach, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a game changer because, and you've heard me do this, I'm sure a dozen times, where a client, well, here's a perfect one. Suzanne, I can't hire employees because I don't have enough customers. And I wish I could get more customers, but there's no employees. And I think that's really them going, I'm too overwhelmed. Like in that kind of circle of I can't do this because of that and this because of that. And I always, the way I articulate it is you got to, take your Christmas lights, separate them, put them all in a nice line, and then it's very easy to see what's going on. But I think that was a logical response to an emotional problem. So what I hear you saying is, if we separate out those problems and deal with them logically, we lose the emotional benefit of going, I don't have to do anything. I'm now free from doing anything. I'd rather have that feeling of overwhelm of, well, of course I'd solve it if I could, Suzanne, but I can't because there's just too much going on, and just give ourselves a ticket out.
Right.
Ooh, that's so ugly. Why do we do these terrible things that feel so yucky, but we do them? I hate that. That's like my least favorite option.
They're habits. They're ways of coping. That's why we created them. They help us cope. So that feeling of overwhelm, and I'm going to mention, you see it more often in other people than you do in yourself, as always, right?
Yes.
You can look at someone else and you can say, man, they keep talking about how busy they are and how overwhelmed they are. And let's face it, there are some people that get started in one of our programs and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed. I've got so much to do. Want to talk about ways to change that? I know, Mike, you probably want to delve more into the problem, right?
Well, first of all, I love that's one of the reasons we do group coaching is it's so easy to see the other guy's problem. Like when
Yeah.
I'm coaching 90% of the people, I'm guessing the non-coached person is like, oh, that's clear and obvious. This coaching isn't hard or smart at all. And then they get their own coaching. Like, that's a genius. I would have never seen it. And everyone else is looking going, well, that's very obvious and pretty self-explanatory. So all of these are things I've just seen over the last decade of coaching in like human behavior. So I would imagine like most problems, kind of identifying the problem is step one, recognizing, okay, sometimes I use overwhelm on purpose to avoid doing something.
Right.
How do we recognize that on purpose? Because now we're recognizing it not in the moment, right? We're being able to look back in the past and go, I have seen that, but it's possible we will not recognize it in the present when it happens. And then how do we go, okay, not only recognize it, but go, okay, I want to have a different action or different behavior or a different habit, as you would say.
So first, perhaps let's get on the same page. Number one is recognizing in ourselves. Yes, I can see, I experience overwhelm. Often I feel overwhelmed. There's so many things to do. I need to do this. I need to get more clients. However, that means I need to do this and this and this and this and this. That's it. I'm overwhelmed. It's easier just to shut down.
Yep.
So first we have to recognize it. And then we have to say, you know what? I don't think this serves me. Right? So if something serves us, then it's a good habit. If something doesn't serve us, and wait a minute, this is stopping me from getting things done. Wait a minute, this is stopping me from accelerating in my business, from growing my business. I'm so frustrated. This is stopping me. Now we say, okay, now we're in agreement. If this is a habit, I want to change it. Step one, right? So,
well, and not just, there's really two levels, and one is stinkier than the last. One is it's not effective, right? Like obviously we just stay stuck. So we all kind of see that on the surface. I'm getting more and more into how I experience my life and my business. That's, again, it's such an unpleasant emotion to choose to feel. So it'd be one thing to be like, I have this overwhelm and it feels terrible, but it gets stuff done. So I take the trade-off. It's like, no. It gets nothing done, but it feels amazing at least, right? Like I can see like, hey, I'm going to go to the pool and not work and forget about work for a minute and have a nice day. Like I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do that, but at least I get the math. Like, hey, I don't do the work. I do get the pool.
Wait a second. That doesn't work. Because you go to the pool and you say, that's it. I'm going to avoid everything. All that stuff is still there. It's weighing on your shoulders. It's like a cloud in your head. You feel guilty.
I'm not saying it's effective. I'm just saying, at least I see the math of it superficially. Like I'm going to at least try to feel good about this. And I get it's hard to enjoy the pool. I mean, I picture some people out there able to do it. I wouldn't. I would be all freaked out, not whatever. But I'm picturing other listeners that are like, I can go to the pool and ignore it for a minute. I don't know how to do that. But at least I get you're at the pool with the sun on your face. Like there is an upside. I don't think the math pencils. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm just saying. Okay. I can see where the guy's
as long as we have clarity on that, Mike.
Well, but the other side is I'm going to feel really terrible about it and not get anything done. I'm like, well, where is the goddamn payoff for that? Like, either let me feel good and I don't get outcomes, or I get outcomes and I don't feel good. I think obviously there's lots of ways where we can feel good and get outcomes. That's the ultimate. But to say I'm going to feel terrible, but at least I won't get anything done is like, you go to the ballpark and it's like, this food is awful, but at least it's really expensive. Like, well, there's no upside. Like you gotta have something. So that one just makes me sad. So that seems like an obvious habit no one wants to live in.
Right. Okay. So first is to recognize that this is a habit, and make the choice and realize it's an effort to recognize the pattern. You will have to catch yourself when you say, I'm so busy, I'm feeling overwhelmed, because this is your common way of operating. It's the same as when you get up and you brush your teeth and you don't think about it. So number one is you're going to have to be vigilant in catching yourself in your wording and your thoughts.
And then also to go, when you do catch yourself saying, I'm overwhelmed, so I don't have to do anything. So I've got an excuse to be miserable my whole life. So I better think through why I feel overwhelmed and do something different. Like we can still take a different second step.
So that's why number two
I
is
thought it
going to
might be.
be, number two is going to be to take a breath and choose to change the thought, to change the feeling, because change will not happen without making the choice.
Okay.
Change a habit requires choice. Doesn't matter what the habit is.
Fair.
Okay. Then we move on to number three. Now we're talking about overwhelm and too many things to do. Okay. Number three may sound easy to some people, harder to others. Choose what is the most important thing to do now.
And if you strip it away in business, that's probably 80% of it. Just recognizing what's the number one thing that needs as a leader, right? Because if you don't have a team, it's really important you're doing the number one thing that needs to be done. And if you do have a team, directing them to be on, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of that's the hub of it. If you're like, I'm unwilling or unable to do that, business ownership may not be for you. That's kind of a non-negotiable. Real quick, Cleaning Nation, if you can think about how you found out about this podcast, maybe a tweet, a Facebook message, iTunes search, some sort of Instagram post, the only way we grow is word of mouth. We don't do paid ads. We don't run ads. You are it. The only ask I have is if you're getting value, share the love. However you found out about this, if it's a review or post, whatever it is, do that. Pay it forward so the next cleaning company owner can change their life as well. Back to the show.
Well, some things are dictated by deadlines. If you have to do payroll, maybe that is the most important thing that you have to do right now.
Or maybe the most urgent. It's like, hey, it's not as important, but it's important, but it's very urgent.
Well, trust me, if people don't get paid, they're probably going to quit.
Yeah. But I need to figure out how to get clients. I need to figure out how to hire and onboard employees. Super important, not very urgent.
Right.
I need to do payroll right now. Also super important and very urgent. But sometimes we allow the important, urgent things to crowd out the globally more important, less urgent things.
Got it. So this is the process to help change the habit. Okay, so deciding on what's the most important thing to do right now, and it's either going to be because of a deadline, or it's going to be what's the most important thing in my business, what will increase my profit, what will bring me more clients, right? It's what is that most important thing to do? You need to choose it. You need to put the rest aside, and then you actually need to do it.
So we had a really good speaker at our event this week that I'm going to steal something she said that you should maybe think about, Suzanne. How can you take the break off your business? Suzanne was that speaker, so nothing more fun than telling her to think about her own words. That was as you're saying, what's the number one thing to like make the boat go faster, to like, that for me, that picture of, because we've all inadvertently driven with our emergency brake on and just you go 20 feet and be like, something's funky, like something's weird. And then as soon as you take it off, like, oh, boom. And I love that word picture. So before you went forward, just as you're thinking, what's the most important thing I can do? What is the emergency brake on my business that I can immediately release might be was helpful for me.
That's great too. Right. So the key is to do it in the overwhelm, in that habitual way of reacting to everything that needs to be done. In that overwhelm, the result is we don't tend to do any of it.
Which is for sure the wrong answer, right? Doing nothing. You could throw a dart at the most important thing and be wrong and be better than doing nothing. That's a guaranteed loss.
Right. It guarantees nothing is going to change, which keeps you in a comfort zone with perhaps the brake on, that you're feeling really comfortable sleeping in the car.
And brings more overwhelm. Because the stuff that remained undone today will remain undone tomorrow with a good chance more crap piled on top.
Exactly. So the change is to actually pick one thing, put the rest aside, and do it. And a suggestion that I use with a lot of our clients is to set your phone timer. 15 minutes on your phone. You can concentrate on anything for 15 minutes. Nothing is going to happen. The world is not going to fall apart. Your customers won't be in problem. Your employees can wait 15 minutes, right? Set the timer, plan to do this one item for 15 minutes. When the timer goes off, you can then choose to take a break, check anything you need to check, or this is going really well. Let's do another 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. You will feel so much more accomplished with this change of habit that it will be easier to keep this habit in place.
So that was really powerful. Will you just, because we went over it kind of slowly, will you just review the steps or the highlights one more time so we can kind of get them all at one time without me making a bunch of interjections?
Okay, and then I have one to add.
Oh, well, sorry. Go ahead. And if there's, I thought that was it. It sounded so good.
It's good. Let's review, and then I'm going to add the last one. It will all fall into place. Okay. Number 1, realize what's going on so that you can choose to change. Mm-hmm. Number 2, take the breath and actually change the thought, change the pattern. And you're going to do that by number 3, choosing the most important thing to do right now. Put the rest aside and set your phone timer for 15 minutes.
Such a doable amount of time. A lot of people are like, I've got this thing and I'm going to block out a half a day. And then we get overwhelmed and we look at it Facebook and it never happened. 15 minutes. I can do anything for 15 minutes.
Yes. And you'd be surprised how much you can get done in 15 minutes. I've done it. I don't have time for this. And I just use my little timer and I go, wow, was that only 15 minutes? I got a ton done in that time. Okay, so number 4, you ready for this? Now, after you've done that one item, now you choose the next.
Voila.
Okay, and that's how we process through overwhelm. That is how we change the habit.
And it's funny when you just force yourself to think kind of linearly like that and take a little chunk off and get a little progress, even 15 minutes of focus work progress. I think the overwhelm naturally kind of dissipates because you're like, okay, I got this. I'm moving forward. And you just start seeing it more clearly. I think that's just I love that framework.
Exactly. And I'm not trying to take away from the fact that maybe you have a multitude of things you feel need to be done. However, the only way you're going to be able to move forward and take those breaks off is to choose one thing at a time in 15-minute intervals. Done.
And I'll give a typical and an atypical example that make it hard to be like, this won't work for me. So, Elon Musk has the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that we do. And he gets a lot, orders of magnitude more done than we get done. And he may be, and really, he's probably better at I'm guessing he's got a clear picture of what the number one thing, even if you look at his companies like solar and space and Tesla and, electrifying cars and, his vision's pretty around one thing, right? So pretty good example of that. And then if you want to go back in time a little bit, Jesus, probably one of the more memorable figures in history, 2,000 years old, still talked about quite a bit. If you look through the Bible, never does it say he was in a rush. He didn't seem to be late, didn't seem to be hurried. So if he had, and I think he died at 33, well, died, was killed, murdered, however you want to look at it. I think his ministry didn't start till he was 30. So I think he really had 3 years. Could you imagine if we were like, all right, you got 3 years, you've got to build a ministry that is going to affect billions of people, thousands of years in the future. And you got 3 years to do it. Go. I don't know about you. I would be overwhelmed. Like what? Oh, and by the way, spend almost all of your time with 12 dudes. That's it. No internet, no social media, no TV, no way to communicate. Just hang out with these 12 dudes and don't rush. Like goodness. And then obviously, you claim to be God, obviously a little different power that we may not have access to. That said, there are lots and lots of examples of just doing the right thing, not rushing, kind of breaking everything down into small components. Like, what can I do right now? What's the most important thing? And just do that.
And I'll add a little sub note. Extremely helpful if you do have an advisor or a coach to help you focus on what is the most important thing to do right now.
Well, two things: to re-ask the question, what's the most important thing? Just even ask the question. A good coach can kind of literally in Slack. I don't know if you saw it earlier. One of our clients gave her 4 to-dos, and I was like, what's your big number one thing that we need to move first? And then we can go back and revisit the to-dos. So reminding you to ask yourself that question, certainly. And then second, to help you in your mind when you start telling yourself, well, it's too confusing and I don't know, and I can't do it, it's an unsolvable problem, to kind of talk you off the ledge. So yes, for those of you that are mentally super powerful, you can do this without a coach. But for most of us mere mortals, the right coach that can ask the right questions and help us get there can be wildly helpful. All right. Anything else we need to give the people before we go?
Perfect. It's as I usually say, it's not about working harder. It's about thinking differently.
I love that because, I love you're zigging when everyone thinks you're going to zag. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's like, well, if I knew how to work smarter, I would do that. It's like, well, think differently. All right. That's a like smarter. Like, I don't know. I have the smarts that I have. Thinking differently is like, okay, I can definitely look at this problem in a different way. All right, guys, gals, if this has been helpful, we've done over 1,000 podcasts, videos, growmycleaningcompany.com is where you can get all of it. Facebook group, if you want to join there, reach out. We've got coaches that are here to help you get clear on what the number one next thing to do is. Just reach out, growmycleaningcompany.com. We'll have someone jump on a call and see if we can't get you some clarity. See you there. Well, here we are at the end of the podcast and you made it. Great job. I've got a little bonus for you for sticking through with me. But like I mentioned before, if you got value out of this podcast and you want to show a little love, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever the heck you're listening to this thing. Share it with a friend. Share the love. And as a special thank you for those of you that stuck with me to the end, how about I give you my personal phone number so we can text? It's a great way for me to get to know you, your business, your goals personally. So shoot me a text now, 602-932-6431. 602-932-6431. I am the only one who responds to these texts, and I will personally respond to everyone I possibly can as long as this number is manned. Don't know how long we're going to keep this at the end of the podcast, so grab it now. 602-932-6431. Give me a text. Say hey. Can't wait to meet you.